Okay, so I want to go through this review with you, and I'm going to go through each question. Hopefully, this will help you out. So first off, for number one, it says classify triangle ABC with these coordinates, and we want to classify by the size, which means we need to find the distance from each of these points. We need to know the distance from A to B, the distance from B to C, and then the distance from A to C. Distance from A to B is going to be, well, 1 minus 1 is 0. So we have 0 squared. And then plus the distance from 4 to negative 1 is going to be 5 squared. You can do the subtraction, which is going to be the square root of 25, which is just plain old 5. Distance from B to C is going to be 5 squared plus 5 squared. Okay, so the distance from 1 to 4, negative 4, and negative 1 to positive 4. You end up with the square root of 50. You do need to simplify that. I'll just give you my way. So if I have 50 and I want to simplify, 50 divided by 2 is 25. 25 divided by 5 is 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. So I know I'm going to have a 5 on the outside, and then square root 2. And then my distance from A to C is going to be the square root of um, uh, from 1 to negative 4, so my x values for A, which is going to be 5 squared, and the distance from 4 to 4, which is going to be 0 squared. So I end up with the square root of 25, which is also just 5. And if you see, we have two sides that are the same, so it is isosceles. Alrighty. So let's. I guess I'm just trying to work through how to work through these problems, how to work this technology. So the next thing is we want to classify the triangle by its sides. If we know what these three angles are, then we know the measures of the sides. So first we find the value of x, then we classify by its sides. I know that the three angles in a triangle, sum of the measure of the three angles in a triangle is 180 degrees. So I know 3x plus 5 plus 4x minus 5 plus 40 is equal to 180. I'm going to have to get something a little bit finer than what I currently have. So 3x and 4x, that's 7x plus 40 is equal to 180. 7x is equal to 140. So x had to be 20. Knowing that, I plugged 20 in. So change the color here. We plug, oh, I guess it changes all of the color. Never mind, I'm gonna go back to the purple. Okay, so I put 20 in, 4 times 20 is 80. 80 minus 5 is 75, so this angle is 75 degrees. This angle right here, well, 3 times 20 is 60. 60 plus 5 is 65 degrees. So I have three different angles, which also means it has three different sides, so I know that this triangle has to be scalene. Alrighty, going to number 3. This right here is exterior angles theorem. You do need to know this. It's not just solving for this angle and figuring out that they add to 180. You need to remember that the sum of the remote interior angles, so this 20 and 30, if I add those together, I'm going to get the same thing as this exterior angle. So the sum of the remote interior angles is equal to the exterior angle. So I know 30 plus 20 is equal to 2x. 50 is equal to 2x. So x had to be 25. Okay, so that's the first part, and we did find the value of x. Now you need to make sure you answer the question. It says classify it by its angles. This right here is 2x, so this angle right here is 50 degrees. which means this angle right here is 130 degrees. And so this has one obtuse angle, so it is an obtuse triangle. Okay. Number 4, on the shores of a river, you have this. What you need to do is mark your angles. C here was 70 degrees. B was 65 degrees, so that's 135. So this right here had to be 45 degrees when you subtract from 180. It says from least to greatest, so I write the angles from least to greatest, so it's going to be 45, then 65, then 70. The side opposite the 45 is BC. I put a segment bar over it because I'm talking about the segment. Then 65 is AC, and then 70 is AB. So that was that one. Hector and Grace, the things you notice, and we're going to continue with this same idea, is I know I'm looking at the angles I'm given. I know that 50 is less than 60, so the side opposite 50, 12.4, must be less than the side, or so the side opposite 50, excuse me. Let me go back. Okay, the side opposite 50, which is 14, must be less than the side opposite 60, which is 12.4, which we know is not true. In this case with Grace, we know 50 is still less than 60, and it follows that 12.4 is less than 14. So Grace was correct there because the larger the side, the larger the angle. So the larger side should be opposite the larger angle in the triangle. Hector was incorrect. For number 6, I am going to draw the triangle first. So A, B, C it looks like. AC is 6, AB is 7, BC is 5. It says list the angles. In order from greatest to least, I list the sides, 7, then 6, then 5. Okay, and then I list the angles opposite those sides. The angle opposite 7 is going to be angle C. We don't have to put measure of because we're not saying greater than, less than, we're just ordering them. The side opposite 6 is angle B, and the side opposite 5 is angle A. So there you go, from least to greatest. Number 7, so what we do when we go through this is we just pick a side and we make sure it is greater than the difference and less than the sum of the other two sides. So I picked the 4 here, then I'm looking at the 2 and 3. So it has to be less than 6 and greater than when I subtract them, when it's just 1. So this would be yes. Okay, this one right here, let's say I picked 8. So then I'd add these two, that's going to be 15. I'd subtract them, and that's going to be 7. Is 8 between 15 and 7? That would be a yes. In this case, maybe I'll pick the 9. Okay, 9 would have to be less than the sum, which is 30, and greater than the difference, which is 10. This is actually going to be a no, because 9 is not greater than 10. So I pick another one. Let's just do 31 in this case. 31 would have to be less than 31 and greater than 3. This would also be a no, and it doesn't matter. You can use different angles. Let's say I did 5. 5 should be less than 16 and greater than 2. Well, this one's going to be a yes. For this one, 26 would have to be less than 26 and greater than 0. This would be no. For this next one, let's say 19 would have to be less than 32 and greater than 2, which is true. So this would be yes. And then this one, 12, would have to be less than 13 and greater than 1, which is also yes. And so you may have different work, but you should have the same answers. This one probably poses most challenge of all the problems. What you have to remember is there are three possibilities. Anytime you have a single triangle, one side of a triangle is always less than the sum of the other two sides. So we have three possibilities, okay? We know that my x plus 3 side has to be less than 2x plus 1 plus 3x. That's our first one. Okay, we also know that our 2x plus 1 side has to be less than x plus 3 plus 3x. And I also know that my 3x side has to be less than x plus 3 and plus 2x plus 1. So we solve those three inequalities and we figure out what for what x does it exist for all three of these? So we have x plus 3 is less than 5x plus 1. Okay. We subtract 3 is less than 4x plus 1. 2 is less than 4x. X is greater than 1/2. Okay. The next one. So we have our 2x plus 1 here is less than, we combine our like terms, 4x plus 3. I subtract 2x, I have 1 is less than 2x plus 3. I subtract 3, negative 2 is less than 2x. X is greater than negative 1. Okay, so we have two things here. Let's just solve this last equation. So our last possible combination of sides, so this is going to be 3x plus 4. I subtract 3x. I end up with 0 is less than 4. Now 0 is less than 4 just says that any x would work because this is a true statement, and you kind of studied that last year. So I know that not just any x will do. I can't just put anything in for x. Let's say I put something like negative 2 in. Well, that would make this one negative 6, which can't even be a side. So we already know that we have a problem there. So let's just look at the other two. So we have x is greater than 1/2 or x is greater than negative 1. So I'm just going to do a little number line here. I'm going to do negative 1 and I'm going to do a positive 1/2. So what I want you to see is this. Where is x greater than 1/2? Here. This represents all the answers that work for this possible scenario here, okay? For this scenario right here, for this third side, this x plus 3 to be less than the other two, less than the sum of the other two sides, my x value has to be greater than 1/2. I then look at this scenario and my x's have to be greater than negative 1 as well, because we need to make sure that our x's work for any equation that we use. Now, this one right here, it's irrelevant because any x works. So we're looking for all the values that work for this one right here and this guy right here. Okay, if I look at this, you can actually tell with the arrows where they overlap. That's where it works for the last two triangles. Okay, and so my final answer is actually just going to be x is greater than 1/2. Now, the thing that you have to make a note of is if it's less than, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to take one of your equations and set it to be greater than 0 and solve. Okay, may not come into play with this particular problem on the test, but look for that on your test. Okay, this guy right here, again, order angles from, so we're just doing angles from greatest to least. Since this is my biggest side, I know A is my biggest angle, so I know it's going to be angle A, then it is going to be angle C, then angle B. Okay, so that's pretty easy. You can rewrite the sides if that'll work for you. Okay, now number 10. Just our inequalities here. It has to be less than the sum and greater than the difference. So 16 and 9 is 25. So my third side has to be less than 25 and greater than 13. Okay, this one right here has to be less than the sum. So that's going to be 40 and greater than um, 14. This right here has to be less than 63. Yeah, 63. And I don't have a calculator here, so forgive me if if this is incorrect. 13. X has to be less than 103 and greater than 19, I believe. Okay. This one here has to be less than 36 and greater than 22. This one would have to be less than, what's that, 41 and greater than 5. This one here would have to be less than 70 and greater than 8. And this one right here would be less than 61. Sorry, 61 there, and greater than 54 minus 7, which is, what is that, 47? There we go. I don't know. So that's pretty easy. I'm hoping that maybe I can change this up a little bit because I want to show you guys this in color. So what I need to see, especially with these inequality ones, and I'll just zoom in a little bit, is that first off is that the, okay, it's not letting me highlight. Huh, it's weird. Okay, let me try it with a pen then. Let's see if we have a thick pen, and we'll try like a yellow. So, yep, there we go. So we have these two sides are the same. Okay, and then let's see if I can change. Okay, it just changes the color for me. So that's not particularly helpful because I would like multiple colors on here. So, okay, what I wanted to show you is that we're comparing these two angles right here, this one and this one. The things that I know, I'm going back to my purple because it's a little bit more fun. And it changes everything, so that's not that helpful. Okay, so I know 117 degrees is greater than 85. So same thing that we've been doing. I know that the side opposite 117, 5x minus 6, is greater than the side opposite 85, which is 14. So the bigger the angle, the bigger the opposite side. I add 6, 5x is greater than 20. X is, sorry, it said x is equal to, x is greater than 4. And we're good there. X is greater than 4 is all you need to write because your sides, the only thing you have to know about your sides, sides have to be greater than 0. Okay, so that was 11. 12, very similar to the previous problem. We have 30 and 30. And then they share this side. So we're comparing the 28 and the 12. We're comparing the sides opposite these angles because the angle is the unknown. So I know that, and you don't have to write it this way, but I'm just looking at this, 28 is greater than 12. So the 52-degree angle has to be greater than the 1/2 x minus 6. I add 6 to each side. This is 58 is greater than 1/2 x. I multiply. X is less than 116. Okay, now here, so I'm going to rate this way. So X is less than 116. Anytime you have less than, especially with an angle, things that you need to note: angles in a triangle need to be greater than 0 degrees and less than 180 degrees. Okay, so we have the less than. This is less than one, or the angle itself is going to be less than 180, but I also know that this angle has to be greater than 0. So for angles, that can get a little tricky. So I do 1/2 x minus 6 has to be greater than 0. 1/2 x has to be greater than 6. X has to be greater than 12. So I just write the other end of this inequality. So x is between 12 and 116. Number 13 in the diagram, measure of A is 37. Okay, so it says which is the longest side. Just give you, I just want to practice this whole idea. This is 37. This angle right here is going to be 117 minus 37 because we know that these two angles always add up to be this angle right here. We did that whole paper activity. So that's going to be 80 degrees. So this angle right here is 80 degrees. Doesn't matter. So for this right here, this is going to be, I believe it's 63, yeah, 63 degrees, whether you use the linear pair or that. Which side would have to be the longest? Well, it's going to be the side opposite the largest angle, since angle B is the largest angle, then AC is the largest side, okay? And we know that by triangle inequality theorem. Okay, and let's see. Okay, supply the correct numbers to complete each sentence in obtuse triangle. There are two acute angles, no right angles, because an obtuse triangle, and one obtuse. Acute triangle, there are 3 acute angles, 0 right angles, because otherwise it'd be a right triangle, and 0 obtuse angles. In a right triangle, there should be 2 acute angles, 1 right angle, and 0 obtuse angles. For 15, we've already gone over this. I'll just do this again. So we have RS, ST, and RT. Okay, we're classifying by sides. Okay, so for this, from 0 to 2 is 2 squared, plus from 2 to 5 is 3 squared. So that's going to be the square root of 4 plus 9, which is the square root of 13, which can't really be simplified. S to D from 2 to 4 is 2 squared, plus from 5 to 2 is 3 squared. That's going to be another square root of 13. And R to T is going to be 4 squared, plus from 2 to 2 is 0 squared. So that's actually just going to be the square root of 16, which is just 4. What you notice is you have two sides of the same, so this is going to be isosceles. Okay. Okay, so number 16. For this, it says that this angle and this angle are congruent, and so it's an angle bisector. It also tells you that this angle here and this whole angle here are congruent. That'll come into play. So because it's an angle bisector, you should know that 2y plus 14 is equal to 4y minus 6. 2y is then equal to 20. Y is equal to 10. Because I know y is 10, each of these angles is going to be 40. This is 40 minus 6. This is 34 degrees. This is also 34 degrees. So the whole angle right here is going to be 68 degrees. Now you're given another piece of information. You know that these two angles are congruent, so this angle right here is also 68 degrees. How do I find angle T? I do 180 minus 68 minus 68. And that's going to give you, I think it's 44. Hold on. I think it's 44. Because that's going to be 120, 136. Yeah, 144. 144 degrees for your angle T. If my math is wrong, you'll be fine. Okay, 17 is if it's a perpendicular bisector, you know that these two parts are congruent, so 1/2 x plus 15 is equal to x minus 7. If you want to, you can clear your fractions. Make sure you do a distributive property to both terms. So you have x plus 30 is equal to 2x minus 14. 30 is equal to x minus 14. X is equal to 44. Okay, and it just says solve for x, so we've completed that problem. Okay, last but not least is this guy right here. So before I even move on with this, it says ABC. So even before that, I'm going to figure out the, I know that the measure of angle 3 is just going to be this 41 plus 25, which is 66 degrees. So I know that this is 66 degrees. Okay, which means that this angle right here is 66 degrees because they're vertical angles. That also tells me that angle 4 is 114 degrees. Okay, because it's subtracted from 180. And then beyond that, I need another piece of information. They give it to me here. They said the measure of ABC. So ABC, this whole angle right here is 57. So the measure of angle 1 is going to be 57 minus 25, which is 32 degrees, I believe. 32 degrees. They said, knowing that if this is 32 and this is 66, that's going to be 98. If that's 98, then this angle right here has to be 82 degrees, I believe. And then we have to find angle 5. I know that this whole angle right here is 98 degrees. This is 25, so 180 minus 98 is 180 minus 98 is 82 degrees. 82 minus 25 is, I believe, 57 degrees. So angle 5 is 57 degrees. So, and I have all of the angles up there. Okay. If BD is a median, that means that's a piece of vocabulary that you need. You know, this part is congruent to this part. So, and this is pretty straightforward. 2x minus 6 should be equal to 22.5 minus 4x. So that's going to be 6x is equal to 16.5. And when I divide by 6, I think it ends up being like 4.75 or 4.25. Let me just check that. So give me just a second. I think it's 4.25, but it doesn't matter. You guys have the idea that you're just going to, maybe it's 4.75. It says make sure you complete the problem. It says find AC. The answer is posted. So, but you have the idea. You just need to know what a median is. It says is BD and altitude. Okay, so what you should know about an altitude is an altitude. If BD is an altitude, that would make this perpendicular. That would have to be that angle right there. This angle right here would have to be 90 degrees. But I know that that angle is 114. Angle BDC is actually 114 degrees. And so therefore it can't be an altitude because altitudes are formed by, or altitudes are perpendicular to the opposite side. Perpendicular lines form right angles, which measure 90 degrees. That angle does not measure 90 degrees, so therefore it cannot be an altitude. So hopefully that was helpful in a nutshell. And good luck on your test.